to leadership levels, taken their orders from the private central banks. They're now going to sick the giant dependent class around half the country, and that includes defense contractors. You live off government contracts. The welfare queens, the corporate welfare people, all of you. They're going to sick this coalition on what's left of the middle class to not fund us into the future, because it'll only fund things for a few months, but to destroy that group of politically independent, motivated thinkers who aren't dependent. So right now the globalists aren't just mopping up what's left of sovereign nations. They are now mopping up middle classes worldwide. Let me read you this quote. 200 plus years ago, if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issuance of their currency, first by inflation, you're seeing that, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them, Federal Reserve secretly funding private media and corporations everywhere with your tax money. Again, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property. Again, they get property taxes, state taxes passed, and then that money's paid in corporate welfare to them and debt to be able to use the currency. See, this is the same war. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issuance of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. That means the Congress. Stay with us. The system is only getting away with what they're doing because it is somewhat sophisticated what's happening. But when you study history, you realize that every society, going back to Rome, goes through this money manipulation because insider elites learn that they can take the gold and the silver out of the coins and put out copper. And then they can debase the copper. And they can come out with clay coins. They learn that they can, when people deposit their gold at the bank, that they can issue checks. People don't want to carry their gold around with them and get conked on the head. And that then they can start loaning out 10 times the real gold they have and buying real things with it and getting people into debt for paper that costs nothing. But the globalists have taken that multi-thousand-year-old money-changing manipulation that angered Christ so much at the temple, because it was going on in ancient Israel as well, going on in ancient China. And every time a culture deploys this and allows an elite to do this, they basically have a money machine to take over. But see, they don't just want to buy things with their free money. They want to loan it to you at 10%, 30%. Now many credit cards, CNN reports, 79.9 APR, annual percentage. I mean, that's more than double. Loan sharking's 25 to 30. More than double loan sharking. That was the credit card reform legislation a year and a half ago with Obama. He'd read off the teleprompter he was going to lower your credit card rates. And it went up to pass 79.9. I mean, that is incredible. And that's what's so amazing about this, is that they've gotten us dependent. They've gotten an army of people who live off the government. And they don't understand what's going on. You've got the mega rich who are many wealthy that are way above. I mean, the Rockefellers 100 plus years ago on record had $4 or $5 billion per family member. And that was billions of dollars in 1906 numbers when there was an audit done by Congress of them. And you think Bill Gates with 60 billion is the richest man in the world? $1 billion today is what $1 million was back then. These people, the Russian government, a decade ago, put out a prospectus on Western money and said that there's a private group basically managing Europe and the Anglo-American system that has over 300 trillion in liquid gold and other liquid assets. $300 trillion. That was a decade ago. Because, well, here's what's exciting. I monitor talk radio. I monitor it in the morning. I monitor it on XM at my house. I monitor TV shows, but I mainly listen. That way I can be doing other things. And now suddenly, not just Michael Savage last week, but I was listening to 1370 last night, driving home and doing some errands, so off and on over an hour, and I was listening to WOAI out of San Antonio as well, and I heard all the local hosts and national hosts openly having guest on. One guy had Pulitzer Prize winners on, talking about how it's not just poor people that aren't paying taxes or income taxes. Poor people do pay a lot of other taxes. That the mega elite have written the rules offshore to not pay taxes, but they went one step further. That's been known for a long time. That those mega rich and mega corporations lobby government to put restrictions on the middle class to shut down their competition. I was almost crying with joy because suddenly once people get something, it spreads like wildfire. This is such positive news. Oh, for my children's future, for your children's future, but we're not going to have to wait for this to hurt our children. This is hurting us now. People always say, well, we're putting this debt off on the next generation. Well, guess what? We've been hearing that for 30 years. Here we are, next generation. It's happening now. But I'm just listening all over the place, and I'm hearing former neocons and mainline conservatives breaking it down and saying this is a rigged insider deal and explaining that the ultra-rich are using government and the dumbed-down domesticated welfare people as a weapon against the middle class, and that if you took all of the middle class from 100,000 up to billions a year, the wealthiest who are still paying the tax system and live here domestically, that if you took all their money, it'd run the country for 3.5 months. Now, if you took the bankers' money, it's unlimited and unknown, then all our problems would be solved. I'm not even saying, quote, take their money, write it off, say this is your fiat, black hole, fake garbage, we don't owe you this. I mean, they admitted in Greece and in Ireland, especially Ireland and in Iceland, the people owed less than 10% of those actual debts. All the rest of it was derivatives the private banks have created who were offshore. But they own the government officials, so they sign them on to it. Stay with us. Dick Russell, the co-author of Jesse Ventura's new best-selling book, 63 Documents the Government Doesn't Want You to Read, is going to be joining us coming up in the second hour. And I agree with about 98% of the book. The fact that they go after the Koch brothers in this book, I just think compared to government-sponsored terror, government-sponsored drug dealing, and things like that, the Koch brothers having meetings that are publicly advertised, trying to, quote, restore the Republic and the Second Amendment and property rights, to act like this is some frightening, horrible evil, it just doesn't fit in with the rest of the book. But again, the book is available at Infowars.com and an excellent page-turner and very informative. You can also get it discounted with Mark Dice's new great book, Big Brother, The Orwellian Nightmare Come True, and get one of my films of your choice free at Infowars.com. Okay, I've been ranting in the first couple segments dealing with the situation we've now reached. But as we went to break, I talked about how suddenly almost every mainline neocon / libertarian, conservative, whatever you want to call them, talk show that I now monitor, because I'll listen to one for 15 minutes and flip, or while I'm busy helping cook dinner, while I'm busy researching news, I'll have it on in the background. When I'm stuck in traffic, I'm seeing a major shift. This is very, very positive. I mean, this morning I listened to Laura Ingraham for about 10 minutes. And she was explaining to mainline libertarians that there are elite corporations and insiders that sign trade deals that are unfair and that aren't a level playing field through globalism that's deindustrialized the United States. And she was saying, you libertarians that are for complete open and free trade, it doesn't work if it's only called free and open trade. If there are tax incentives to move out of the U.S. and China lowers their currency and China has slave labor, then that isn't free or open or fair trade. Or if insiders like General Electric lobby to be able to build power plants in the U.S. and China, but then lobby to shut down their competition, and they actually run the White House through the economic board. She didn't go that far, but she was explaining it in layman's terms, that's not libertarian. I mean, it's so simple to say, I'm libertarian. Yes, get rid of our borders completely. You know, have no tariffs and trade. Well, what if all the other countries don't play along with that? You shut down. So they're not living in the real world. I am what you could call a constitutionalist. I believe in libertarian ideas. But at the same time, you have to be a big boy and actually understand the players you're dealing with. I mean, a lot of libertarians I know say get rid of the military entirely. Well, the problem is there are other big corrupt statist regimes like Russia and China who guaranteed would try to come in here and take control, at least of the countries around us, because that's how systems work. It needs to be a global culture of liberty that has an idea whose time has come, and no army can stop that. And we need to, through the peaceful means, take control of every nation on earth and change our minds about the systems of government and restore liberty for a global spirit of 1776 and take back each nation. And then nations that respect freedom and liberty and who are libertarian, we then trade with them. All right. I'm now digressing, and this happens every day. I've got all this. I mean, in the old days, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, I would talk for probably 2-3 hours just on one of these articles I've got here in front of me. And now, every stack I could talk for 3 hours about. Every single stack. Later in the third hour, I want to get into Morgellons. I've never really talked about this disease, this parasitic type disease that scientists in Germany, the United States, major universities have pulled out the fibers. It appears to be some type of nanotech. Certainly there are schizophrenics and others who then hear about it and then decide they have it. But that doesn't mean that everybody's crazy who's getting it. And I've done a lot of research over the years trying to decide whether I believe it's real or not. But now researching nanotech, there are systems hiding in plain view that clearly fit the bill of Morgellons or Morgellons-type nanotech technologies. Just like the old-timers back in the mid-90s, scientists, environmental researchers, Forest Service, toxicologists, I mean, so many of them that came out, like Clifford Carnicom and others, they did the samples, got the aircraft, flew behind chemtrailing aircraft, said it's barium salts, aluminum dioxide, and a list of things. And now 2 years ago, the White House science czar comes out and says, yeah, we've been doing secret testing since the early 90s. He mentioned the guy that got a Nobel Prize in, 92 for it. We have been testing spraying the atmosphere to protect you from radiation from the sun because of global warming and our deteriorating atmosphere. And all the giant programs we've had are still classified, but we can tell you they've been going on. And then he listed the exact things that people 16, 17 years ago broke down that it was. And they admit that all of these huge programs have just been the test, and now they're debating going public with massive global geoengineering, terraforming, weather modification. CFR 2 years ago put out a big 30-something page report admitting it's been going on and trying to sell it. I mean, this is incredible. Bill Gates has invested billions in it. The Arab countries are putting up antenna farms manipulating the weather. I mean, it's on. But the American people were told it doesn't exist. Conspiracy theorists talk about it. It doesn't exist. So most Americans still don't even know there's weather modification. It doesn't matter that it's totally admitted and going on globally. They just say, no, it doesn't exist. A lot of Americans say there's not a private Federal Reserve still, or there's not a Bilderberg group. I still have occasionally a waiter come up and laugh at me. You know, generally they're a listener and supportive, but maybe one time out of 20, the waiter comes up or the lady at the checkout line at the grocery store and says, are the black helicopters going to get me? Are they manipulating the weather? Oh, is the Bilderberger hamburger group going to get me? And they giggle, and I just giggle back and go, that's right. It's real funny, isn't it? It's real funny. But here's an article out of Science Newsline. University of Michigan has put this report out. Researchers inject nanofiber spheres carrying cells into wounds to grow tissue. and the system is a nanotech